Islam. So we're back, and I just wanted to give a short introduction because this is a very long definition. But we're on page 369 of Black's Law Dictionary, 4th edition. On the left-hand side of the page, it says, in criminal law, all right, a voluntary confession, in criminal law, a voluntary statement made by a person charged with the commission of a crime or misdemeanor, communicated to another person wherein he acknowledges himself to be guilty of the offense charged and discloses the circumstances of the act or the share and participation which he had in it. All right. Also, the act of a prisoner when arraigned for a crime or misdemeanor is acknowledging and avowing that he is guilty of the offense charged. Confession comprises whole criminal charge wherein admission relates only to particular fact or circumstance covered thereby. All right. So, these individuals, similar to this, to what's going on in chapter 15 of the Red Book here, you're talking about scienter or a guilty mind or malice. Oftentimes, in criminology, they say that the criminal will return to the scene of the crime. All right. And, the guilty conscience will force them to confess if there's any moral turpitude. They will admit their wrongs, seek a recompense and, seek to do right. But if they're filled with pride and selfishness, greed, and all those things, the lower self, we'll get to that. We'll get to that. I don't want to, spill the beans too much, but, just keep these things in mind. All right. Let me read this again. 14. If one has only reached the plane of treachery, he is a lover of deceit and will betray a friend to save his selfish self. Behold, you men, or whatsoever you be, your words fall lightly on my ears. 16. Can I prejudge these 100 priests, turn traitor to myself and them because of what you say when you confess your treachery? All right, the same ones who claim to follow, love, and honor the prophet will confess their very hatred and contempt for what the prophet has brought them by their very actions, words, and deeds. We don't have to look that far. All we got to do is use our discernment, use our eyes, our spiritual eyes, use our ears to hear and listen to what they're saying. Sometimes we don't even have to look at nothing. We can just listen to what they're saying and hear it and know that it's not true. All right. And keep in mind, when they talk about justice in the scales of Libra, and they say justice is blind, they often have a blindfold on her. You know what I mean? Because they don't want justice to see what's really going on. But that, we could argue that a number of different ways. But anyway, 17, no man can judge for me. Let me read that again. No man or woman, you don't want to be sexist. No man can judge for me. And if I judge before testimony is in, I might not judge aright. All right? So make sure that anybody who's passing judgment, make sure that they have all the testimony and that all the testimony has been presented and given, equal chance to be presented and weighed. All right? 18, nay, men, by whatsoever way you came, return. My soul prefers the darkness of the grave to little flickering light like these you bring. 19. My conscience rules. What these, my brothers have to say, I will hear. And when the testimony all is in, I will decide. You cannot judge for me, nor I for you. So, 20, be gone. You men be gone and leave to me this charming light. For while the sun shines not within my soul, there is a light surpassing that of the sun and moon and that of the moon. Pardon me, let me read this again. Be gone. You men be gone and leave to me this charming light. For while the sun shines not within my soul, there is a light surpassing that of sun and moon. Talking about that Allah and man, right? 21, 2. Again, the white robe priest appeared. Let me back up. 21, pardon me. 21, then with an angry threat that they would do him harm. Typically when you reveal the truth, you're doing the work and they realize they can't stop it, they'll try to slow it down. And then when you rebuke them, for trying to tempt you, then they'll try to send you angry threats and, want to threaten you and everything. And, I've dealt with Moors who want to pop off real crazy and talk all tough. You know what I mean? And at the end of the day, they're just expressing an angry threat similar to what these false priests did. All right. With Joshua. Okay. And I do mean overkill. That's what's going on. Overkill, okay means overkill. But, you really don't want to get into that because that goes into the MK Ultra mind programming and all that good stuff. And we're not really dealing with that today. But, we can get into it if y'all got questions and comments. Send us an email. But 21, then with an angry threat that they would do him harm, the vile tempters left and Joshua was alone. 22, again, the white robe priest appeared and led the way. And Yehoshua stood again before the Hierophant. 23, and not a word was said, but in his hand the master placed a scroll on which the word justice was inscribed. 24, and Joshua was the master of the phantom forms of prejudice and treachery. Islam. And I think that's what we're dealing with oftentimes when we talking about this electrifying age, dealing with the trolls, shills, and bots. All right. We're dealing with the phantom forms of prejudice and of treachery. All right. Because they're prejudiced against others who they're trying to say that they're separate or different from. And then they're treacherous not only to themselves, but to, Allah in man and the Allah or the God within their own selves. Because they're, instead of honoring and respecting that, they're dwelling in their lower selves and acting out of, hate, lewdness, thoughts of murderous and treachery and theft. All right. All those things are the lower self that we were talking about earlier. All right. But just to back up, chapter 15, verse 15, circle 7 says, but Jesus said, away from me all tempting thoughts. My heart is fixed. I spurn this carnal self with all its vain ambition and its pride. Islam. And then chapter 15, verse 15 of the Red Book says, behold, you men, or whatsoever you be, your words fall lightly on my ears. Why do they fall lightly on my ears? Because you're tempting, these tempting thoughts that you're giving. And my heart is fixed. I'm spurning these carnal desires of self. All right, with all of its vain ambition and its pride. I'm not dealing with that. Islam. So we're back. And just to switch gears here, I just wanted to pull something out of the administrative functions real quick. I might, jump back into it. But on the section of the cherub, all right, talking about the sergeant at arms of the doorkeeper. All right. 5 on page 72 here, it says the doorkeeper shows our temple visitors great and cordial hospitality. They show where restrooms are, they get water for the visitors, they hang up coats, they answer all questions, they give out information of future meetings, etc. And they escort dignitaries who are visiting our Moorish society. These two are the task of the sergeant at arms or doorkeepers. All right. 6. The sergeant at arms, being mufti, enforces the laws of our Moorish society and maintains peace at any cost. The sergeant at arms is also in charge of our charter, the symbol of our legislative power and authority. They are to see that the flags are at all times respected and protected. Remember the subversive act of George Washington and his use of the axe regarding the cherry tree. 7. Maintaining the general overall security of the temple building, the meetings, and the congregation is his/her major responsibility. All right. 8. A letter of introduction is to be made to the county sheriff or sharif and to the local police department, notifying them of our Moorish society having peace officers operating in accord with our Moorish laws, rules, and customs. All right. 9. The office of the sergeant at arms or doorkeeper shall hold the responsibility to keep the temple property and the temple regalia, etc., secured and in good order. They must keep the temple clean, orderly, decent, warm or cool, and comfortable. At the close of the meetings, they shall assure that all temple property is properly secured, and if any property, instruments, or items are ever removed from the temple for an outside function, it is the responsibility of the assigned officer responsible to that charge to secure the return of the same. Islam. So let me just pause and we're going to move on to some more demonstrations here. So just hold with me. Islam. So we're back. And at this time, I want to reiterate and discuss, for peer review, the topic of consular court, because it seems, and I've been getting word that there's a lot of confusion that's being spread about what consular courts are and what they mean, and this, that, and the third. So let me read from Civic Lesson Book number 14A1, and we're at page 8, starting about the middle of the page, and the term consul. It says consul, a wazir, officer, consul, or minister representative of a nation who is appointed or assigned the duty of the overseer of the nation's relationship with another nation concerning the citizens, mercantile, economics, etc. The consul or consuls generally report to a higher consul, officer / minister, who is called consul general. Consular courts. Consular courts generally deal with civil cases, and in some instances having criminal jurisdiction. Consular courts are held by consuls of one nation / country in the territory or jurisdiction of another nation / country. These courts are operated under the authority of treaties, which are constitutionally enforced. Islam. All parties must be lawfully identified with documented proof of nationality and citizenship, and documented proof of sovereign authority to enforce the law, constitution of the people. Do not go beyond this paragraph if you do not understand it. This is your key. Islam. So if you don't understand what I just read, stop right here, rewind, play it again, go do some research. All right. But let's continue for those who, those more scholars who get it. All right. The descendants of Moroccans born in the Americas, the Moorish Americans, should refer to the Treaty of Peace and Friendship of 1787 between Morocco and the United States of America. Remember, the European Christians are foreigners settled in your land. This is your home, Moors. As consular courts were abolished, and this is on page 9, as consular courts were abolished in 1956 AD, 1376 Moorish calendar year, all issues between the Moors and European Christians, being of a treaty nature, are obviously of a federal jurisdiction. All right? The states cannot make treaties and therefore have no jurisdiction. A change of venue should automatically be recognized by inferior courts. Any jurisdiction claimed without mutual agreement within the prescribed proper forum is void of law. Federal and state officials must set up consular courts to have lawful jurisdiction in Moorish affairs. Where provisions are not made to address foreign relations and intercourse in a consular court as prescribed by law, then no jurisdiction exists. All right? If there's no consular courts to deal with the foreign relations and intercourse, and to answer to and, deal with the treaty obligations of each party, all right, then no jurisdiction exists. A court of general sessions, congressionally sanctioned, in accord with the national constitutions and treaties, with consulars and officials representing both nations / nationals present and in propria persona. Mind you, the Congress adjourned sine die 1861. All right. So if the Congress adjourned sine die 1861, and then we fast forward to 1956, and then the Consular Courts, the U.S. relinquishing jurisdiction of the Consular Courts in Morocco, all right, and then them recognizing the Kingdom of Morocco over there in the Kibulan, but not the rest of the empire over here, all right. You got to keep in mind where Morocco really is, all right. What part of Morocco are they talking about when they say, other territories of the former Ottoman Empire? Hold on, pardon me. So let me back up further, and actually I'm going to read the full text. All right, and this is a copy here, facsimile of AA 222141, which is referenced by Brother C.M. Bay, and on notice and on the record, on the public record, part of the congressional records at the Library of Congress. All right, and it says here 141 to carry into full effect the provisions. So to carry into full effect means to activate, to be active, not passive. All right. And in the provisions of the treaties of the United States with certain foreign countries, the ministers and consuls. So note the ills and bays, they're ministers, but we're talking about the consul part. All right. Consuls of the United States in China, Siam, Turkey, Morocco, Muscat, Abyssinia, Persia, and territories formerly a part of the former Ottoman/Moorish Empire, including Egypt, duly appointed to reside therein, shall, in addition to other powers and duties imposed upon them, respectively, by the provisions of such treaties. Keep in mind, the treaties are what's guiding here. All right. This is what's guiding foreign relations and intercourse. All right. Respectively, be invested with judicial authority described in sections, in the list of sections, all right, which shall appertain to the office of minister and consul and be a part of the duties belonging thereto wherein, and so far as the same is allowed by treaty. Again, the limits of the treaty, all right. Keep that in mind. This is what's determining how things are being decided. And in accordance with the usages of the countries in their intercourse with the Franks and other foreign Christian nations. All right. And keep in mind, this treaty of peace and friendship was between the Moors and these foreign Christian nations. All right. 142, general jurisdiction in criminal cases. The officers mentioned in section 141. So that's the ministers and consuls. These are officers that we're talking about. All right. Mentioned in section 141 of this title are fully empowered to arraign and try in the manner provided in sections blah, blah, blah. Right. It gives it to you right here. All citizens of the United States charged with offenses against law, committed in such countries respectively, and to sentence such offenders in the manner and in such sections authorized, and each of them is authorized to issue all such processes as are suitable and necessary to carry this authority into execution. So not only do they have are they fully empowered to arraign and try, they're also empowered to come up with those, and they're authorized to issue all those processes as are suitable and necessary. And notice it says processes in here, but anyway, we'll just keep that in mind. As are suitable and necessary to carry this authority into execution. All right. 143, general jurisdiction in civil cases. Venue. Such officers are also invested with all the judicial authority necessary to execute the provisions of such treaties, respectively, in regard to civil rights, whether of property or person, and they shall entertain jurisdiction in matters of contract, at the port where or nearest to which the contract was made, or at the port at which or nearest to which it was to be executed. All right, keep in mind these ports. All right, and again, the limits of the treaty. All right, at the port where or nearest to where the cause of controversy arose, or at the port where or nearest to which the damage complained of was sustained, provided such port be one of the ports at which the United States are represented by consuls. All right. Such jurisdiction shall embrace all controversy between citizens of the United States or others, provided for by such treaties respectively. All right. So they're talking about the consular courts being the proper venue for those citizens of the United States or others. Or others. Others is a very broad statement. Very, very broad. Provided for by such treaties respectively. So what treaty might we be talking about? All right. What treaties could we possibly be talking about? Oh, I don't know. Maybe the Treaty of Peace and Friendship, 1787. All right. And let me get into some of the language of the treaty. Hold on. So pardon me, before I get into that, before I get into the language of the treaty, I just want to keep reading here. We're back in lesson book 14A1. All right, still on page 9. And let me back up. It says, as consular courts were abolished in 1956 AD, 1376 Moorish calendar year, all issues between Moors and European Christians being of a treaty nature are obviously of a federal jurisdiction. The state cannot make treaties and therefore have no jurisdiction. All right. This is why the federal jurisdiction is really, the beginning, middle, and end for Moors. Right. But let's just back up and just talk about realities of things. All right. If you go to federal court right now to file a claim or file charges against someone, last time I checked, it was like 400 notes. All right, 400 fiat notes. All right. Now you can compare that just for the sake of doing the math to 85 notes, which is what we're offering for Moors to bring their charges to consular court now via faithsprovinceregency.org. All right, and to get their claims on the dockets. All right, versus 400. So now two, you want to keep in mind. And let me pull up this definition right quick. Hold on one second. All right, so when we're talking about consular courts, when we're talking about the difference between federal and state and all of that good stuff, for Moors, right, based on this treaty and the intercourses that we're interacting with these Europeans and these foreign corporate policies and corporations, the consular court would in fact be what's known as a court of first instance. All right, court of first instance, and this is Black Law 4th edition. All right, page 430. I'm over here on the right hand side of the page. Court of first instance, a court of primary jurisdiction. Courts of this title may be found in the jurisprudence of the Philippine Islands. Islam. Let me just jump down. Court of General Sessions, the name given in some states to a court of original jurisdiction in criminal cases. All right. So if you truly want to distinguish between consular court and court of general sessions, traditionally consular court dealt with civil issues because it became the court of the maritime jurisdiction. All right, in modern context. All right. And you're talking about what's going on between, on the Moorish estate right now, we are dealing with mercantile, law of the sea problems oftentimes. And then the Court of General Sessions, for sake of conversation, would strictly handle criminal cases. But according to Section 141, or rather 142 of what I just read, pardon me, I can't find it right now. Got too much stuff in front of me. But that court the consular court under 142 can handle criminal cases, as well as under 43 handle civil. All right, and so that covers the bulk of what you're dealing with when you're talking about law. All right, and you're talking about what type of courts and things of that sort. Now keep in mind, which they didn't go into in this definition here, but a court of first instance. All right. When you're talking about the appeals process, anything that's decided in that court of first instance or that first court where you filed everything, if you get a final judgment and you're appealing it, whatever facts, whatever law has been decided, all right, that is considered a moot point at that point. Right? Now, we could leave people to their own devices and leave the situation as it is, where every Moor, has to step up and, get right with the writs and everything, and then they write their writs. And the writs, of course, you got to go through that whole, rigmarole. But what often happens is that Moors are either not getting responses, or they're not getting a favorable reply, or the courts or the tribunals and whatnot, they're just railroading them. All right, and Moors are left hung out to dry, literally, rode hard, put up wet, and hung out to dry. All right, and a lot of times Moors don't really know the law, so they don't really see in that process how things are supposed to go. But when you're talking about a court of first instance, all right, if that first court decided that you are, a purple people eater, once you get to appeal, we don't have to argue whether or not you're a purple people eater, because that's already been decided. You had your chance to rebut the claim. You either did or you didn't, and keep in mind that whatever rebuttal you make in that court of first instance preserves that issue on appeal. All right. So that's why you have to object to certain things. You have to speak out on certain things. Otherwise, you'll fall into a position known as estoppel. Pardon me. Islam. So when we're talking about estoppel, realize that it's a very, very long definition. It's about 3-4 pages. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Almost 8 sections. All right. So I'm gonna be real brief here. Estoppel. All right, and this may be a new concept for some people, but I really need you guys to get this in mind. This will help clear up a lot of confusion. All right, estoppel. A man's own act or acceptance stops or closes his mouth to allege or plead the truth. An estoppel arises when one is concluded or forbidden by law to speak against his own act or deed. An inconsistent position, attitude, or course of conduct may not be adopted to loss or injury of another. Islam. So, when you're talking about consular court, you're talking about making certain claims, and then you got other people saying, oh no, consular court's not the right way to go, don't do that, They may realize and recognize, more scholars, they may be creating a circumstance or situation where you may be stopped from making certain claims. All right, based on your argument and based on your previous deeds and actions, or lack of deeds and words or lack of actions. All right, estoppel may be claimed, and this is what sets the stage for what Taj always talks about, which is latches. All right, for those who understand property law, or even torts. All right, which is can be iterated in modern terms as the statute of limitations. Islam. So if you don't make a certain claim within a certain amount of time, all right, you can be stopped from being able to even bring that claim at a later date. And the court has there's no obligation to hear your claims at that point. Now, if we're saying that the consular courts in 56, they relinquished jurisdiction, and then all cases, it says in the modern, connotation, if you look up or if you look up Title 22, Chapter 2, Section 141 on Cornell's website, the Avalon Project, it'll tell you in there they picked a particular date to relinquish the jurisdiction, and that by 1960, all cases and controversies had been settled. All right. Now let's just use our thinking mind here. All right. If I wasn't born in 1956 and I wasn't, competent between that time and 1960, and the Moors who were did not step up, did not bring any claims to the consular courts, the U.S. is saying, oh, well, we're relinquishing jurisdiction. We're giving it back to you. And everything that we were handling, we're done with that by 1960. All right. And keep in mind, the previous definition we were talking about gave mention of rights and certain duties. All right. And when we're talking about, when we're talking about slander, you got certain rights and duties. All right. Or you have a certain office that you have to maintain. Otherwise, you may be, again, falling into a position of estoppel or estoppel in pais. All right. So getting back to lesson book 14, A1, let me just read this thoroughly. Where provisions are not made to address foreign relations and intercourse in a consular court, as prescribed by law, that no jurisdiction exists. All right. So if they relinquish jurisdiction back to the Moors, and then the Moors are not stepping up and giving or giving the law that would express those provisions that would be required to handle the foreign relations and intercourse between, the Moors and the Christian powers. All right, these Franciscan these Franciscans that we're dealing with, this Franciscan Moorish paradigm that we're in today. All right, then there is no law, there is no jurisdiction. All right, and at the end of the day, we can hem and haw about how we're following the law and we're enforcing the Constitution, but if there's no lawful due process, Islam, and shouts out to brother Mark El Alim Bey for his demonstration, and his build, and he reiterated to me, brother Haj Malik El Shabazz made mention in a quote, and I'm paraphrasing here: if you stab me in the back, right? You stab me in the back with a knife, and you pull the knife out just a little bit, that's not justice. All right? If you pull the knife out all the way, that still is not justice or lawful due process. Right? You would have to suture up or stitch up the wound, clean it off, make sure it heals up properly. All right? And I would dare say, and then you still have to charge the individual, arraign and try them, give them their sentencing, and then enforce that sentence, be it civil or criminal. All right? And if you stab me, that's a criminal act. All right? I'm gonna charge you criminally. I'm not gonna play with you on the civil end. I'm just gonna charge you criminally. That's just me though. All right? But moving on. Realize if you pull the knife out a little bit, that's not justice. All right, if you pull it out all the way, that's still not justice. You got to clean it up, you got to heal it, make sure that everything is right. All right. So when we're talking about consular courts and these foreign relations between Moors and whatnot, which I thought part of this movement, I thought the main part of this movement was uplifting fallen humanity, right? And like you see demonstrated here, you got the prophet with the woman, the womb man, and humanity written on her womb, and he's taking her out of the cares of the world. So you see that? The cares of the world, the murky ethers, onto the solid rock of salvation. All right? This is symbology of what we're supposed to be doing in uplifting fallen humanity. All right? So if we go to the Holy Quran, all right, and we see that we have certain instructions, all right? We have certain instructions from the prophet that would tell us, how we're supposed to interact, how we're supposed to be dealing with each other, all right? And what our duties are to each other, all right? But before I do that, let me pause. Hold on. I want to read something. Islam. So before we get into that, this chapter 25 here, I wanted to read coming out of lesson book 5, civic lesson book 5 or whatever, right here. Pardon me. Chapter. What chapter we on? Chapter 8. Yeah. Chapter 8, page 43. All right, and it says mutuality, coming out of Black's Law Dictionary 6th edition, page 1021. All right. Reciprocation, interchange, an acting by each of two parties and acting in return. Quote, mutuality of contract means that obligation rests on each party to do or permit doing of something in consideration of other parties' act or promise, neither party being bound unless both are bound. All right. So, getting with that in mind, let me read chapter 25, a holy covenant of the Asiatic nation. Ye are the children of one father. And this is again chapter 25. If you want to follow along, Surah 1, verse 1. Ye are the children of one father, provided for by his care, and the breast of one mother have given you suck, or given ye suck. Let the bonds of affection therefore unite thee with thy brothers, that peace and happiness may dwell in thy father's house. And when ye separate in the world, remember the relation that bindeth you to love and unity, and prefer not a stranger before thy own blood. If thy brother is in adversity, assist him. If thy sister is in trouble, forsake her not. So shall the fortunes of thy father contribute to the support of his whole race, and his care be continued to you all in love to each other. Islam. And that was chapter 25, all right, of the Moorish Holy Quran, the Moorish Holy Temple of Science, Moorish Science of America, Islam. So with that in mind, all right, keep in mind that as Moors, we don't place our trust so much in the words, but in the titles and, the history behind those titles. All right. And when we're talking about international exchange and intercourse and whatnot, let's just back up though, before we get to that. There was some comments made, about the fact that if you are claiming consular court, right? And they were using the etymology of the word consul as the basis for this argument, right? But unfortunately, so often we as a people do not know how to read, and that's why I'm so grateful that Taj goes over the etymon degree, right? And these very basic reading skills, all right. And one thing that he's very good about doing is when you read a definition, he stops you and makes you recognize the whole, all of what you're seeing. All right. And basic dictionary skills would have helped clear up a lot of the confusion that I was hearing, going on and seeing going on. And I've been seeing going on, lately. But it says right here, and I'm using some of the same references they were referencing, etymonline.com, just for point of reference. It says late 14th century, one of the two chief magistrates in the Roman Republic. And I could find the same definition in the Black's Law 4th edition, which we talked about last time. But it says one of the two chief magistrates in the Roman Republic. So already we're talking about somebody dealing with law, magistrates. That's dealing with law and actually administering the law, all right, or being in a position of judgment, all right, over the law, over cases and controversies, all right. Comma, from, indicating that one came before the other, from Old French, consular, and directly, meaning there's no derivation in where it came from. It's not hard to figure it out. Directly from Latin, consul. And then it says, quote, magistrate in ancient Rome, probably originally. So we know when we talk about connotation and denotation, when they're talking about the chief magistrates of Roman Republic, that's modern. That's a modern connotation of the word consul. It came from Old French, which consular, and that word consular directly comes from Latin, consul. All right. Probably originally one who consults the Senate, Islam. So if we're talking about, the Congress, you got the House of Representatives, which is, made up of reps based on the population of the respective states or the parties that they, the bodies politic they represent. And then you have the Senate, which the Senate, they only get 2 people per state. All right. And this system of government is ancient. All right. It goes back here in Morocco, northwest of Maxim, Morocco. All right. Al-Maghrib al-Aqsa, for those who don't know, who are confused about what we're talking about when we say Morocco, and, North America, just for commentative linguistics. All right. It goes back to the 5 civilized tribes of the Iroquois Confederation and what was known as the 2-party or the long house system, the 2-house system, pardon me. All right. So you had one house that was made up similar to the House of Representatives, where each party, each group or each tribe, each clan was able to send as many representatives as they needed based on the population of that clan. All right. And they would meet, sometimes at Poverty Point, Louisiana, sometimes in other places throughout the nation, to consult with each other. All right. And if you have a problem, or if there was some violation of law between the parties, you would go to the Senate, or you would reach out to your senatorial representative. You know, now you can reach out to both, really, in the modern times. But we're just talking about in the context of the definition here. All right, so late 14th century, then we got the Old French, and then before that, it was directly from Latin. Now, for those who do not know, the prophet and history indicates, and the prophet said, if you're gonna learn another language, learn Moorish Latin. Now, and Moorish Latin, for those who don't know, is commonly known as Spanish. All right. Now, why is that? What's so important about Latin? Well, Latin is one of those Moorish languages that the Moors gave to not only others, but specifically to deal with commerce. All right. And again, going back to the Treaty of Peace and Friendship of Amity and Commerce between the Moors and the European nations. All right. And now let's further break this down. It says in modern usage, and again, they're talking about the modern usage, not the ancient. An agent appointed by a sovereign state to reside in a foreign place to protect the interests of its citizens and commerce there began with the use of the word as appellation of a representative chosen by a community of merchants living in a foreign country, circa 1600s. Again, this is modern. We're talking about the modern connotations, not ancient. All right. This is an extended sense that developed 13th century in the Spanish form of the word. In French history, it refers to a title given to the three magistrates of the Republic after the dissolution of the Directory of 1799. All right, so you got to look at words not only in the defined context of what's being presented on the front end, but on the etymological basis of where the word derives its origin or meaning from. All right, proper context. All right. Now let's just double check. Now consular, because we're talking about the Consular Courts. We didn't say just consul, we said consular. So consular is an adjective. All right, same reference here, talking about online etymology dictionary. Early 15th century. Now this is a modern connotation pertaining to a Roman consul. All right, from Latin. So the Romans got it from the Latin. All right, which indicates the Moors. Now, and again, let's back up. Everywhere, all the land mass is one. We're talking about Asia. Moors are indigenous to the planet. Moors in particular are the founders of civilization all over the planet. So please, someone, please tell me, what system of government do Europeans or Romans have that was not given or based off of Moorish culture? Please indicate to me, what culture do Europeans have? What civilization did they create that they did not already get the blueprint for from the Moors? All right. And in specific, when you're talking about the Greeks and the Romans, you're talking about the Etruscans, all right, Saracens, all right, or you're talking about the Ptolemy, the Greek Ptolemy when they came in and invaded Hakuta or modern day Egypt and, learned from the mystery schools and the mystery systems what civilization, what government really was. Again, I ask those out there, what civilization did the Europeans create? What society, what rules to govern nations did they actually create? What are they the founders of? Islam? So, going forward, it says Latin conciliaris, of or pertaining to a consul, from consul. All right. And then from 17th century, which is again a modern connotation, it says as pertaining to the office of a consul in the modern sense of in international law. All right. So when we take the ancient and the modern and we consider all things, consul generally is pertaining to the office of someone or dealing with international law. And again, keep in mind, we're already talking about these treaties, the Treaty of Peace and Friendship between the Moors and the Europeans. All right. You could put them on the other side. Moors, Europeans. Either side. It don't really matter right now. We're just trying to get a thought through. All right. So when we're looking at a Latin dictionary, all right, and it talks about consul, all right, there's several definitions here. Of course, you know, we got to go to the end to see the beginning. So it says, definitions: 1, consul, highest elected Roman official, 2 years. Then it says 2, supreme magistrate elsewhere. Then another one, the verb, consulo, consulare, consuli, consultus. All right, third conjugation. It says decide upon, adopt, look after, / out for, pay attention to, refer to. Islam. And, you know, they were convoluting a lot of stuff, but we do know that the beys are the law enforcers, that the governors, all right, they're charged to know the law. But if there's not due process of law, again, injustice anywhere is injustice everywhere. So if the ills and the beys are not, if the ills are not giving the law and the beys are not enforcing the law, then due process is not going to happen. All right. If the consular courts don't exist, where? Please show me where on this land or in the current judicial system that Moors or Europeans can bring their controversies to the forefront, to the public record, and have them heard, arraigned, tried, all right, on a consistent basis. And not only do they get a final judgment, but they can have that judgment enforced by that body. Islam, don't worry, I'll wait. Please tell me what body does it on a consistent basis. All right. Now, I know for a fact that the federal courts are supposed to be where that happens, but most of the time Moors get their cases thrown out for whatever reason, you know, and I don't hear of too many Moors actually bringing charges and being able to fulfill those charges. You know, I don't think it's justice that we file writs and then people just get fired or they retire, right? And then they just go back home on their, you know, they go home and get to eat off of their pension, all right? Or that they're out here, you know, slaughtering Moors left and right, and you have Asiatics who are supposed to be in leadership positions and saying, oh, well, they didn't claim their national birthright, so, you know, they're subject to all the ills that you know, Rome wants to put on them. But the charge that we have is to uplift fallen humanity, to teach people under Act 6 about their divine creed. Islam, correct me if I'm wrong. You know, I may be a little off on this, but you know, we do have a lot of things to consider here. All right, and do keep in mind that we did give these Europeans permission to do business on our land. All right. Now, the fact that with that permission, that they decided to go pick up from Philadelphia and move to D.C., all right, to be closer to the ports, right? That kind of falls in line with what we were talking about earlier about the case of controversy being brought at the port nearest to which, or, you know, the port nearest to which the case of controversy happened, or where the treaty was enacted, all right? And then you really don't understand the Buck Act and how that extends the federal jurisdiction, you know, over the rest of the states, creating this. Hold on, Islam. So we're back. Let me just read it again. Where provisions are not made to address foreign relations and intercourse in a consular court, as prescribed by law, then no jurisdiction exists. A court of general sessions, congressionally sanctioned in accord with the national constitutions and treaties, with consulars and officials representing both nations / nationals present and in proper persona, would be a proper jurisdiction. All parties who operate by de jure constitutional law and treaty law. All parties would operate by de jure constitutional and treaty law, pardon me. If there is no proper jurisdiction or venue, then no lawful or legal trial can be held. Therefore, all rights revert back to the people, self-government with sovereign authority. This is where Certificate AA 22141 clearly proves its purpose. When government officials supersede their jurisdiction, or deny lawful due process, redress, recourse, and remedy, quote, at law, then they are the criminals and are traitors to the Constitution and treaty to which they are bound by law and from whence they derive any authority at all. All right? This is where your Zodiac Constitution comes into effect. Use it. Islam, Moors. All right, it goes on, it says the Treaty of 1787 is the law of the land just as the Constitution and is binding on all judges of every state. Look at them as one document, talking about the Constitution and the treaties. All right, as far as law and authority is concerned, Moors are not citizens of the Union State Society, but are the people of the continental United States, being part and parcel, all right, of the government to which the Union of States are obligated. All right. So with that being said, if Moors are not citizens of the Union State Society, but are in fact part and parcel of the people of the continental United States, being part and parcel of the said government, and we know for a fact that the Moors have an obligation based on that treaty to make and enforce the law, but then, the law that we've given the Europeans, they are not fulfilling. It would be asinine of us to think that the European who is continuously suppressing us is going to hail us into courts, populated and to be passed judgment by a jury of our own peers. It's asinine to think that. All right. And it's even more asinine to think that the European is going to be just in his ruling when we have a certain obligation to uphold and enforce the law on our own. All right. We the people to form a more perfect union. All right. I ain't gonna go into all of that right now. But anyway, keep going. The constitutions of the two nations in conjunction with treaties are the work. And let me pause for the cause. It's not asinine if that's all, if that is the best that you can do. All right. And if you refuse or don't know how to go ask those who know the law and get a favorable reply, then I don't know what to say right now. Like, you got to study. Like, if that's where you're at right now, then that's where you at. You gotta spend some time. You gotta spend some more time with this information. You still got some purging to do in terms of your concepts. And we all really do. It's a continuous process. It's not like it's a process that ever really ends, because we all were born in sin or ignorance. All right. There's very few of us who were born into the Moorish paradigm and the Moorish mindset. All right. Much less the mindset of making and enforcing the law, being the eels and bays, and running government. And the prophet said, "I'll keep the European here long enough to teach you government." And he's gonna keep some of these Europeans because some of them are good farmers. He said the prophet said he like good peas. You know what I mean? But I digress, and I'm just paraphrasing here. But we're still on page 9, lesson book 14A1. It says the constitutions of the two nations, in conjunction with treaties, are the working tools for adjudication in jurisdictional arguments, procedures, and venue. Keep in mind the duality of the Great Seal of the United States. With Moors, any non-federal sanctioned court, inferior court, is in proper jurisdiction. If a court is not operating with constitutional law and treaty, it is color of law and fraudulent. Islam, any colorable courts are improper and have no jurisdiction, although all states' officers knowingly operate with color of authority. Islam, any colorable or negative law, non-organic constitution is in blatant violation of the Constitution and the Treaty of Peace and Friendship of 1787. Moors, when dealing with legal or lawful matters, always be aware of what law, court, or venue is in operation, and what law its officers are claiming authority by, the nation they represent, and knowing the difference. Always challenge the court's jurisdiction. All right. When or if Moors are in court of the United States, and this is page 10, are in courts of the United States of America for any reason, the courts and their officers should be made aware of their obligation to the Constitution and the Treaty of 1787. For the record, all Moorish Americans should refer to their Zodiac Constitution, remembering that they are not the property, wards, slaves of the states, and not, I repeat, not Negro, black, colored, etc., or any other brand names that allude to slavery. And be careful, Moors, because some of your own interpreters and fezzes will try to put you back into slavery. Islam, be very, 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 very careful. Make sure that you study like all of them say. And like the prophet said. But when you study, you got to apply these studies. Otherwise, you get rusted. You follow me? If you don't use it, you lose it. We're just talking about in general, all right? But going on, it says, as national sovereign people, all right, not individuals, but a sovereign people, a national sovereign people, encompassing the entire nation. All of Morocco. The Moors are entitled to lawful due process at law. And again, injustice anywhere is injustice everywhere. All right? Take the knife out a little bit. That's not justice. All right? It has to be lawful due process. The constitutions of all parties involved should be presented into evidence for the record to protect and to preserve the rights of the people. Islam, the constitutions and treaty law is the sovereign law, where any de jure claimed authority is derived. Islam, so if anybody's claiming authority and they're not dealing with these constitutions and the treaty, then we already know inherently that their authority is not de jure and in fact is de facto. Islam, the rights of all people, citizens of a nation, are protected by the written constitution of that particular nation, not by privileges. Islam, the people's sovereignty is the source of the Constitution and treaty law. Constitutional law, the people's combined sovereign power of authority, is enforced by their national representatives. Islam, through government agencies, and y'all can look at it for yourself. Page 10, take a screenshot, do what you got to do. I'm not making this up. This is a very old document. This is over 20 years old, mind you. This lesson book 1481 is over 20 years old. And anyway, I'm gonna leave it there. I'm gonna leave it there for right now. But notice what it says here. It says the rights of all people, citizens of a nation, are protected by the written constitution. And again, a lot of these people can't read. Of that particular nation, not by privileges. It's not how I feel today. All right, it's not just on my personal whim. We're talking about the written constitution. We have to deal with what it says in the constitution. Every state, when it says every state, on Article 4, Section 4 is guaranteed a Republican form of government. What does that mean? What does that look like? All right, and when that is violated, what are the policies or procedures of the courts or tribunals? What are the protocols of the Moors? All right, of those who claim to know the law, of those within the temple, the grand sheiks and secrecies, all right, to enforce those laws or those rights so that that Republican form of government is guaranteed to all. All right. What does that look like based on that written constitution? This is a real question. All right. The people's sovereignty is the source of the constitution and treaty law. Constitutional law, the people's combined sovereign power of authority is enforced by their national representatives through government agencies and sub-agencies. Islam, all lawful agencies of government must have a delegation of authority order from the Congress or the House of Parliament, Majlis, to the Dejima, Council of Elders, the representative ruling body of the two nations in one. Demand all agency officials to produce their delegation of authority when they put demands on you. Islam, lawful government does not and cannot mandate anything on the people. Government authority and power is limited by the Constitution. Governments are empowered to protect the rights of the people, not use authority or sovereignty allotted them through the Constitution to violate the same. This is why Moors have a written constitution for their protection in national and international affairs, linking themselves back with the families of nations. All right? And let me just reiterate what a lot of these haters and naysayers did not mention. All right? So when you're talking about the Organization of American States, all right, or the OAS, recognize that the U.S. is a quasi, party to a lot of these treaties, but where the rubber meets the road, and where the buck stops, similar to how they do with the ICC and the UN, because they are what's known as a member state. All right, and they claim that that their government and their society is so advanced, they have certain leeway that allows them to back out of certain agreements. And whenever a member state vetoes, all right, a particular resolution, that member state's veto is effective across the board and is effective as if it was 2/3 of the UN making the vote, similar to how the Congress is set up. All right, and like the president can have veto power. All right, there's got to be checks and balances. All right, but if you don't have the executive power, the legislative, and the judicial power, it's clearly defined. All right, and if everybody's not clearly operating within their limited jurisdiction, then you have anarchy, you have confusion. All right, and typically where anarchy and confusion is, violations of people's rights are not far behind Islam. So, and with that violation, we also are dealing with a color of law. Or dealing with color of law, right? So furthermore, going on page 10, it says color of law, artificial, used to control Negro, black, and colored people, artificial. All right, keep in mind, so they're using the artificial law to control the artificial people. All right, so when are the real Moors, when are the real people going to stand up and be themselves? Islam? Keep in mind, realize you got to learn to be yourselves again. All right, because we've been reduced to servitude and slavery for so long. A lot of us got Stockholm syndrome. We really think that this European is got our best interests in mind. We really do. Some of us really think that they're gonna help us out and that they really are gonna do what they're supposed to do. Now, mind you, I'm not talking about all Europeans, because some Europeans are actually assisting the Moors. They are actually taking their places amongst the affairs of men and disseminating the information. They're talking about the prophet. All right. And you can look on my channel to see, some of the Europeans that I'm talking about. But I just want to keep things in perspective here. All right. Keep in mind the political, social, and civic danger of using and alluding to the Union States brand names of Negro, Black, Colored, etc. So whenever a Moorish American is trying to, be jokingly or seriously denationalizing Moors by calling them Negroes, that's a supreme violation. Not only against that individual, but against the body as a whole. And it's even more of a supreme violation when these words and these actions and these deeds are coming from people who are in quote unquote positions of power and authority. All right. It's a supreme violation. Supreme violation. They're practicing color of law because they're using those same colorable, labels, brand names, slave labels on their own people, denationalizing them. And they have not, for the record, placed any writs or affidavits on the record rebutting your claim of being a national point for point. All right. And if it keeps up, they just might fall into default. All right. And for those who don't know already, go check out the little cost schedule page to see, just get an idea or clue what the damages may be on the civil end of things. We're not even talking criminal right now. We're just talking about civil damages. All right. So, be careful. Be very careful, Moors, because culture is in the language. All right. The European surnames, which denote possession. And we had a lot of Moors, who was asking questions. All right, I'm nationalizing. I'm doing my name declaration and correction. Can I just keep the name that I've been given? And it's kind of like, yeah, you can. You have the right to, but once you come to fruition and knowledge of knowing yourself and knowing what these European surnames really mean, that they're really brand names that denote possession, I don't think you want to carry them with your Moorish. I don't think you want to mix that with your Moorish appellation. Oil and water, oil and water don't mix too well. But I digress. Anyway, the European surnames which denote possessions such as Smith, Jones, Johnson, etc. must be returned to the European nations. All right? These names are not of Moorish Asiatic parentage. Claim your own Moorish names and nationality at all times. All right? And this is why, this is why we caution against that. De facto government officials and the state's judges, prosecutors, and state agencies operate with color of law and anti-constitutional statutes and ordinances to extract, extort, finance from the unsuspecting state ward's shadow. All right? So if you're still carrying the slave brand warship names, they still have, an arguable basis to claim that you are still their property. All right? And if they're claiming you as their property, they're going to take what's theirs. All right? Islam. So, furthermore, it says any branch of government. Notice it says branches. Government is not inherent in one party or one body, one office. It's spread out. Again, checks and balances. Islam. And then there's sub-agencies and subgroups and whatnot that operate under those three main branches. All right, legislative, judicial, executive. All right. Keep that in mind. Any branch of government agency / agencies, person or persons employed by such agencies, all right, who operate beyond its or their jurisdiction or delegation of authority is in violation of the Constitution and the treaty. So whatever their job title is, if it only says they're supposed to be a window washer and they out here mopping the floors, well, that's outside their delegated authority. All right. If you're a policy enforcer or armed mercenary, and you're only supposed to, come to a scene of a crime when you've been called to it, but instead you're over here speed trapping, and you might be outside of your delegation of authority. I might need to see what you were delegated and what your limits were in terms of being out here and doing business on my land. I need to see that in writing just so that we're all clear, because you telling it to me. You saying that you're a sheriff, you saying that you're a deputy, whatever. That does not inherently prove to me what authority you were given. That doesn't give me a full description. It doesn't, it may only be it might not even be an outline, to be honest. All right. Officials using color of authority violate the people / citizen, thus commit a criminal offense. In such instances, the ultra vires statutes do not protect the culpable officials or employees. All right. And when you're talking about ultra vires, that's when you start getting into Clearfield. All right. And Clearfield doctrine, we talked about that. I'm not going to get into that today. But email us if you got questions. Contracted agencies, non-government, municipalities, judges, prosecutors, person or persons, clerks, etc., or others employed by such agencies, municipalities, etc., are bound to uphold and support the Constitution. Islam. And the next section goes into the Bar Association, talking about the judges and lawyers and how they're all, it says, remember this, the state's judges are members of the Bar Association. All right. The state's prosecutors are members of the Bar Association. The state's lawyers and attorneys are members of the Bar Association. The state's judges methodically use threats, fear, and coercion to force people to hire their fellow Bar Association lawyers and attorneys. All right. Already right there, if everybody's a part of the bar and, there's supposed to be a separation of powers, the judge's supposed to be non-partial, don't we have a conflict of interest here? Just inherently? How often do Moors make a point of this, though? How often do they object to this and preserve this claim or issue for appeal? Just a thought, Islam. But it goes on to say, question, for whom are the state's judges working? Whose agents are they, the Bar Associations or the people's? The Bar Association is not the law. The Constitution is the people's law. Study the law and use the law. All right? The Bar Association is not a law. It's not the law. It's an association. You follow me? The Bar Association is not the Congress. It's an association. All right? The Bar Association is not the president or the executive authority. It is an association. All right? Similar to a trade union All right. They're organized because they're similarly situated based on a particular type of work, Islam, or trade, in commerce. All right. And if it's commercial in nature, automatically its auspices or its jurisdiction at some point is going to fall in line under that treaty, because we're talking about a treaty of amity and commerce. All right. So whatever anybody's doing in commerce, it cannot supersede or violate that treaty and the Constitution. All right. And for the sake of conversation, don't they call themselves esquires? Isn't that an English title indicative of the crown in England under the Queen of England? All right. Isn't the Bar Association short for Barristers Association? All right. And when you talk about the title of esquire, that's the title right below a knight. Islam. So it is a foreign title of nobility that one has taken on for themselves in contradiction to the Constitution. Caveat emptor, buyer beware. All right. If you are wise, you will claim your Moorish nationality. And I say this to all Asiatics. If you are wise, you will claim your Moorish nationality and your sovereign rights, wearing them like a warm coat in the winter season. Use your Moorish Great Seal Zodiac Constitution. The state's judges, prosecutors, and lawyers are not the keepers or protectors of constitutional law. So why are Moors leaving everything up to them? Why are they not, in fact, instituting and constituting their own courts in whatever form or fashion they think is most beneficial to them, or most advantageous to their body politic, their style of government, what have you? Why are they not doing that? Islam, there's just some questions I got, and if they're not going to do it, why are they criticizing those who are trying to do the work? While sitting on the sidelines, laughing, kiki, you wrong, you so wrong. If it's so wrong, then just wait for me to fail. You don't have to try to accelerate it. It's going to fail in its own regard, If it's truth, it's going to stand. If it's falsehood, it's not going to stand. Pure and simple. It's going to fall. Like I said, there's no need for you to debase yourself, to get out of character, to disrespect anyone, to slander them, to make libelous statements against them. There's no need for that. You're only setting yourself up for failure at that point. You're creating your own hell. All right, which really is just, and bitch means bank, and hell is the exchequer's chamber. It's the place where they put you under the exchequer's chamber, under the bench, and realize that you go into these tribunals, they're just really doing banking. So you do need to have an understanding of accounting. All right, finance. All right, basic business concepts, things of that sort. How do all these things work? How do they work together? How do they work, in violation of the Constitution, or how do they not work in violation of the Constitution? What happens when there is a violation? What work must be done, all right, to preserve those rights or to extend those rights where necessary. All right, if Moors are not coming together and they're not talking about these things in an honest and caring manner, then we're going to continue this cycle of ignorance. All right. So it goes on to say the state's judges, let me read this again. The state's judges, prosecutors, and lawyers are not the keepers or protectors of constitutional law. They do not represent the people. They are of a private guild that actually subverts the Constitution and inject themselves as the law. They are all members of a private, non-government exclusive club acting as if they are the law. This is a clear case of conflict of interest, is what I was saying before. Can such operatives render a fair trial to anyone? Definitely not a Moor. They have no lawful jurisdiction. So if the judges don't have any lawful jurisdiction, the prosecutors, the quote-unquote lawyers don't have any jurisdiction. All right? And the Consular Court has been, the jurisdiction of the Consular Court has been relinquished back to Morocco. All right? Meaning that Moors have the rights to enact their own courts. All right? And it would behoove them to deal with the consular courts, because that is where issues and controversies of diversity are dealt with, and specific diversity and issues of commerce. All right. So you're looking at the Trading with the Enemy Act. All right. There's certain things that the Europeans themselves cannot do, because in under Trading with the Enemy Act, they would be acting against their own interest. All right. When you look at Marbury versus Madison and the McIntosh case, all right, they were not going to give the landowner who got his deed or his title of estate from the chief, from the native Indian, Moorish chief, the Indian chief, what they called him in the case. But he can't, the judge can't rule in his favor, even though he, that's the sovereign power that we have to respect, and we are in treaty relation with. And even though, you did get to them first, all right, if we hope to establish what we plan to establish, being the subversion of that constitution, being the subversion of that treaty, all right, I have to rule in favor of this individual, the other landowner, who got his deed from the county or the newly established city, state. All right. And when you see Marbury versus Madison, they basically say that, we're not the final court because, we're final. We're final because we are giving the final judgments. We're not just final because we say we are. We're final because that's what it is, based on the Constitution and based on the separation of powers. All right. It's the magistrates or the judges who decide the interpretation or the application of the law. The Congress and the Senate write the law. All right. They can give guidance. They can create common law. And that's what they did when they enacted AA 22141. They relinquished jurisdiction of the United States in Morocco back to the Moors, Islam. So at what point are the Moors going to take their places amongst the affairs of men? I ask rhetorically. I'll wait. Don't worry. We're doing it. And when you're ready, you can go to FezProvinceRegency.org, check out the Consular Court Restoration page, download your copy of the juror questionnaire. Make sure you read that prologue, because the prologue is very important. Very, 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 very important. All right. And I might give some highlights today, or we might get into it next class. But I just want you guys to keep in mind that we have a government, Moors, but we have to take our places amongst the affairs of men within it. All right. If we do not take our places, then we're not holding our end of the bargain. We're not on our square, truly, Islam. And if that is the case, if we're not going to step up, then, the rest of the world is waiting on, the rest of the world is waiting on us to do. They're not going to be so patient with us. All right. And let me just pause for the calls. And we're back. And I just wanted to reiterate something about the OAS that I forgot. When you're talking about this Organization of American States, you have to keep in mind, similar to like the Panama Canal case. The indigenous peoples of the Panama Canal sought to sue and file a claim against, the Panamanian government and the U.S. government for taking their, unlawfully taking their land, their sacred land, and converting it to what they wanted to in terms of, dredging the Panama Canal and whatnot. And this is one of the biggest cases, of the OAS. But part of what came out of that case, and based on what happened around the time when it was still the League of Nations and whatnot during the Prophet's time, all right, after he got the land mandate, they jumped out of the agreement, and they basically stopped any other nation from being able to bring suit to them, other than bringing the suit to them through their courts. And of course, we already know how people get, railroaded, and especially if you're foreign, you get railroaded dealing with these quote unquote American tribunals. All right. So again, it would behoove the Moors, who are found all over this nation, all over this world. And we know that Moors are found all over the world. All right. And we know that the empire is not just in northwestern Mexico, it's south, central, and adjoining islands. All right. These Moors, these our brethren and sisters, all right, don't they deserve due process? Do they not deserve to have a platform by which they can bring their claims and grievances? Whether they have a grievance against the Moroccan Empire or the U.S. Don't they deserve their day in court? All right. If a Moor injures another Moor, who decides? If a Moor injures a European, who decides? We know the European is going to try to hail you into their courts, but who really is supposed to have the jurisdiction to decide if there is no consular court, which is the proper jurisdiction to deal with diversity of issues? All right. And if God, heaven forbid, if a Moor violates a European, just outright violates him, how is that European gonna get remedy? All right. And again, backing up to these foreigners, how are our brothers and sisters all around the world supposed to get remedy when we know that the U.S. courts are not offering that platform? All right. They're not putting their case in controversy before a jury of their own peers. Like, let's really think this thing through. Who does it benefit not to have the consular courts? Really? And I'll leave you guys with that. And so from there, I just want to leave y'all with that. And we'll get back into this later. We'll pick it up. We'll pick this up again later, pretty soon, very soon, very, very, very soon. All right. As well as other things, questions and comments, but I don't want to get you guys too far down the rabbit hole today. I really want y'all to, to take the bite-sized chunks,